Because when you know how things are made, whether it's software or the toaster in your kitchen, or in my case, a candle or watercolor paint, when you know how to make it, you also know how to dismantle it if you need to. And I think that's so exciting and powerful about, this industry as a whole.
Hello, welcome to Hacker House Chat and Boba Talk episode number 11. Today we have a special guest, someone we've admired for a long time. Jenn Schiffer is, in her own words from her blog, a community manager, writer, web developer, and artist with 30 hobbies, 2 computer science degrees, and 0 attention span. I really love that description. And more formally, she was the director of community at Glitch, later acquired by Fastly, for 7 years. We have the whole curriculum team here with us, so let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. I can start. My name is Julian, and I'm the senior curriculum developer here at Codédex.
Hi, Jen. I'm Ellie, and I'm a curriculum developer at Codédex. I've been here a little over a year now, and then also super stoked. I used Glitch for my first coding project back in 2020, so this is very full circle.
And I'm Sunny. Very excited for this conversation.
Thank you all so much for having me. It's nice to meet y'all. I've talked to a couple of y'all before. Thanks to everyone who's here in this little group. This is really cool to see people bouncing around. Lots of cats and people swirling around. Cool vibe.
Thank you. So I'm just going to pass it off to Sunny to sort of do some intro questions. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining.
All right, Jen. So we chatted over email a little bit. Been following you for years through your monthly newsletters, your Twitter, took your A-frame web VR course back in the day. So you're like the face of Glitch to the outside world, at least to the Learn to Code space. And just to set this up, when we got your email in August about, it's your last email, it definitely got us very emotional because even though we never met, we felt like we knew you through your writing. So maybe just kick it off. Like, how's life? How are things been for you?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a big question because this week marked 6 months since I had left Fastly and therefore Glitch. That last email I sent out, I believe the subject line was like, "This will be the last email you get from me." And I got a lot of replies that were like, "This is clickbait." And I'm like, no, it's the truth. It's the last email you'll be getting from me, at least from my Glitch account. So yeah, things since then have been nice. I needed to take time for my mental and physical health. I'd been working really long hours, full speed ahead for several years, going from launching Glitch in 2017 to all the things that tech startups were going through around that time and through COVID and then through an acquisition. So going from having 30 coworkers to 1,200 coworkers, quite an adjustment. After a couple of years, I felt like the team and the product were in a good place where it was time for me to step back and think about what I want to do next, which is something I found I do about every 10 years. In my past life, I was doing curriculum and teaching at Montclair State University. And then I went to the tech industry working at the NBA, doing basketball stats tables and consulting for various companies that were building JavaScript applications. And then I ended up going into community management with development as well at Fog Creek, which is what Glitch was before it was Glitch. It came from a company called Fog Creek, which co-created Stack Overflow and invented Trello. So found my way through all these places where my DNA has been empowering people to use code as a medium for art and for work. And now I'm figuring out what I want to do next, like on my own. And so it's a lot of making art and taking people along with me on that journey until I figure out where I'm going to go next. And it's been nice. It's been a privilege, but also the outcome of a lot of really hard work that I've done. Yeah, and this is probably my first almost work-related conversation since September, but it's great.
Sorry to pull you back in, but no, I mean, thanks
for talking to us.
Oh no, I love it. I love Codédex. I mean, Codédex and Glitch go way back to the beginning, and so I wouldn't even call it a project anymore. You're a full-fledged company and a community. Started early on Glitch, and it's always been a great story for me to tell people on why would I use Glitch? And it's why would you build anything? You can build whatever you want. And who knows, maybe one day you'll have a community like with Glitch of, 3 million developers or, with all the people here gathered today in this cool little pixel world. You can never really imagine when you write your first line of code or design your first mock-up or write your first business plan of like what things will come out of it. And that's really what's been great and empowering about learning to code back when I did.
That just inspired a question, or sort of like something that I've been thinking about lately is a lot of people ask in general, why make stuff from scratch to begin with, right? Like there are so many tools that can make things for you. Why learn to code? And I've been thinking a lot about like the joy of making things for the sake of making things, like the joy of going through a process and like challenging yourself and failing and being embarrassed and then showing something in public, and how like that you can't really skip those steps. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious, like for you, can you talk a little bit more about like the joy of making in general?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, no matter what age, this resonates with them. But one of the first things we make when we're children is art in some way, whether we're stacking blocks or Lego, building the homes or evil lairs we wish to have, drawing our families and characters, drawing us as we want to see ourselves. And so innately, humans like to create. And code, I was in high school in the late 90s. There was not a lot of computer science curriculum. In fact, I didn't even have a computer in my home until the latter end of my time in high school. And so it was like this completely new shift in how people think and create. It's kind of similar, I think, to how people are seeing generative AI. There hasn't really been something as quite innovative as the internet and the World Wide Web. And I got to be in my formative teenage years while that was all happening, for better or worse. And up until that point, I just loved knowing how things are made. I liked taking things apart and hopefully being able to put it back together again. And software was such a thing where, you didn't need to have a lot of money to learn how to code. Like I had access to that in the classroom. And that was really cool because we didn't grow up with a lot of money. And so there are things like we didn't have a computer in our house, but our library did. And so I spent a lot of time at the library. And I thought, well, if I really enjoy taking apart things and building things with code, then other people might, and I can show them how to do that. And so I was always really super into sharing with people how I do these things. Before software, I was building computers because that was the only way for me to have my own computer in college. I had a couple of old computers from my stepmother's uncle that his office is getting rid of, and I like piecemealed together a kind of Frankenstein of a machine, which I still own, and it's ginormous. It doesn't work, and it had like 30 megabytes of a hard drive on it.
Oh.
And it had a DVD player, which was huge, literally and figuratively at the time. And so I really enjoyed building the computer and having something that I had made. And I really kind of just like handcrafting things, whether it's websites or, I've been making my own candles and watercolor paints and stuff like that. I've always just had an innate interest in the process to creation and sharing with others so people know that like it is way more accessible than folks would make it out to be.
That is incredible. So I did see that you went to Montclair, your CS bachelor's and master's. I just couldn't connect the dots, and your story right there, just like it made all the sense. So I went to college in 2009. I also studied CS, but that era was kind of, like CS wasn't popular. It was all guys, right, at the time. So I was wondering how you got into it, but that filled in so much blanks for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to how I ended up in it. A lot of it was I grew up in a household that wasn't very affirming of my interests and skills. I had parents who did not excel at high school and were very insecure about that. And my rebellion was, well, if they're saying I shouldn't be good at a thing, especially as a girl at the time, well, then that's what I'm going to do. And so from an early age, I was resisting, not even just society was telling me, because I didn't have access to society really. There wasn't social media yet.
Right.
My society to me was my parents, my guidance counselors, and my teachers.
Mhm.
Also, being isolated, the computer, I was able to play games with other people across the world, and we had chat rooms on AOL. It just opened up my world in a way where I was like, okay, this is where I belong and I want to create for it.
Mhm.
And so computer
Mhm.
science was just, at that time, if you really wanted to get like a technical job, you really had to go the classically trained route. You had to go get your degree in computer science. I went to a state school because that's what I could afford. I found that I was having a hard time getting interviews at companies because I went to a state school versus a private school. Now, that's not really the case in the world anymore, which is really great. But back then, in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was like a mold that you had to fit. I ended up staying to go to grad school because I was like, you know what? I like teaching. Maybe I'll get my PhD and be a professor. If I went to grad school, I had the opportunity to start teaching classes as an adjunct and then a graduate assistant, which is where they pay you some pennies per semester to sometimes grade. But our school allowed me to actually teach because I was good at it. I graduated college in 2007, so right into the Great Recession. So
Mhm.
the landscape for jobs was not dissimilar to what we might be seeing around this time because the job market in tech always ebbs and flows with the economy. I was grateful to have the opportunity to stay and work on a thesis and a project. And when I graduated, it was time to go into the industry, which I did after a couple of years. I did stick around for a couple of years to do curriculum and accreditation at the university. And then I learned JavaScript and got a job doing that.
Awesome. And you mentioned you ended up working for NBA. How did that come about?
Yeah, so one of my good friends, Nick, he was an engineer there, and I have a pixel art editor called make8bitart.com,
Yep.
which I had been building and had gained some popularity within the JavaScript community. People were starting to know about my work because I was sharing it a lot. When I told my friend, I think I'm going to leave the university and try to get a software developer job, his manager was like, have her come in and interview. I did the interview. They gave me a take home. I did the take home. I came in for an in-person interview. They had me redo the take home in person just to make sure that I had done the take home myself because they had at that time in around 2013 there was a scandal where people were outsourcing their work to people overseas. So they would get a job and they would just send their work out to other people. And so a lot of the major media companies, I think Verizon was where this was happening, and NBA, it's a sports league, but it's a media company. So a lot of the media companies got spooked and changed their interview processes. And so they just like had me redo it in person just to kind of show that I knew how to do it on the spot as well, which I thought wasn't a terrible practice actually. But I got the job and yeah, I was there for about a year working on stats.nba.com. Shouts out to that team. And it was cool because I love basketball and I loved statistics and I grew to love HTML tables, which is a lot of the stuff that I was working on.
Is NBA stats still the thing where you like Google like the score of a game? That's what shows up in in Google search. Is that what you're talking about, or something else?
Well, it's stats.nba.com is like the official statistics site for the NBA league.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure where Google sources their stuff from. It could be in partnership with the NBA. It depends. It's been a while since I've been there. One of the cool things that I got to work on was a digital library archive of the history of the prior commissioner David Stern's career because he retired in the middle of the year that I was working there.
Cool.
So I got to work on a lot of special projects. Sports tech is very interesting because it's media and broadcasting. Like NBA.com at the time was really owned by Paramount, who was the broadcasting company. And so I didn't actually work on NBA.com, although all the tweets of people having issues with League Pass and NBA would tag me. And I'm like, oh, that's not me. But if the stats are bad, let me know. So it was a really interesting space. I really enjoyed that work a lot. it's fun. So if you like sports and you're like learning to code, there's so much technology, especially now behind all of the leagues, college now, D leagues, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of really great opportunities there to be like immersed in something that you love and get to do the thing that you've learned in your craft.
And during this time, were you like commuting to the city, or you're from Jersey, right?
Yeah, I'm based in Jersey. A lot of the sports leagues have offices in New Jersey, which is where all the tech stuff is based.
Gotcha.
So I think like the NBA's tech office is actually in Secaucus, New Jersey.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I think MLB is around there still, and the NHL was, but I think they moved to Kearney. Their headquarters, like the business end, is always in New York. We got to see players once in a rare while. You know, they would sometimes have a player come and hand out cupcakes to us to make us feel like we're part of the larger league. But yeah, we still go in Jersey. And it was a brutal commute. I never got my driver's license because I'm from South Brooklyn. I've never lived outside a 12-mile radius of where I'm born. And so I was hoofing it on New Jersey Transit.
Nice.
Bus transfer after bus transfer. Don't have to do that now though, which is great.
Yeah, and by the way, for folks that are not from New York, Mount Clear, I think it's like 50 minutes from the city, and the Secaucus is like the first train station, right? Or yeah. Cool. I think that's a great origin story. I mean, this is probably one of the coolest one I've heard. Let's talk about Glitch. There's so many questions I have about Glitch. I actually didn't even know it was only a 30 people team. I knew it was pretty small, but I just didn't know it was 30. That's pretty wild for 30 people, but maintaining a platform for 3 million users.
Right now, it's even smaller.
Oh, really? Because of the acquisition?
Yeah, but when we got acquired, there was like 12 or so of us. All of us that were there in the early process of acquisition, like Fastly hired all of us. We even had some contractors that Fastly took on full time. But right now, you really only need 2 standard hands to count how many people are touching Glitch every day, which is cool. Because I think we forget that it doesn't take a lot to build stable software, but I wish there were more resources for the team so there can be some innovation. And that's kind of probably one of the biggest differences between working as a startup and being part of a larger corporation is you have the resources to keep going as you are, but innovation happens a little bit more slowly because you're not the only important thing like in the group. You're now part of like a whole collection of different products that all are also deserving of resources and stuff like that. So it's not like worse, but it's just like a completely different kind of workflow and headspace.
Well, I guess my question for you is, in your 7 years at Glitch, is this 7?
It was 7.5. Yeah, I was mid-March would have been 8 years if I stayed.
Yeah, so 7.5 years. I mean, that's probably like 7.5 dog years. Probably felt even longer for you.
Yeah.
When you talk with friends over dinner or something, like, what are the things you tell them that went well? What didn't go well? Are there something you're like, I wish we did X, or what are those first things that pop in your head?
Well, when you're an engineer and you're building a thing, the thing that you're building is like your product. But there's a whole layer of business that has to go on top of it. There's all these responsibilities besides the code having to work. Like the users have to be having a problem that's being solved by your product. The users have to find out about your product somehow. Your users have to be supported. Your users have to be, paying in some way to pay for the people that are making all those other things work. Like businesses are hard. And when you're an engineer working on a project and things are slow because you don't have the budget or there's other things going on, I learned really early on not to take personally that the thing that is most important to me is not necessarily most important to everyone else, be it my colleagues or the users. And if you've worked in academia, whether you're a researcher or professor, there is this like culture of like everything everyone's doing is the most important thing in the world. And tech kind of has a similar thing, but in practice, it's not the same because the money is bigger. There's a lot more money in the industry. There's a lot more things at stake, a lot more people's salaries. If you're working on like a class, there's really only if you have a whole lecture hall, like 100 or so students. For Glitch, I was responsible for a few million developers, and then also the team, and then you also have the rest of the people at the company, which of course with Fastly was a lot more people than I was used to. So there isn't anything that like I regret or wish we would have done. I wish that people who created products like Glitch could continue staying independent. So I wish Glitch and every other product could stay independent. That's not a regret of mine. It's not my fault that like Glitch had to be acquired, because it's business, it's capitalism, it's the market, it's Fastly made it so that Glitch can continue existing, and that's really important. But I kind of wish that we lived in a world where we valued and empowered people to not just independently create something, but maintain it and sustain it over an extended period of time.
Totally. No, I mean, I feel like that's definitely the dream, right? And you're saying stay independent is meaning like it's not acquired by another parent company, right?
Yeah, like not acquired, or not like sold to somebody else.
Yeah, it's just not
Glitch is in a unique situation. When we knew we were going to get acquired by Fastly, we let the community know about Fastly by opening up a beta mailing list for learning about edge computing. And that was our way of like putting Fastly's name into the community's, mind, so that if we were to be acquired by Fastly, they would know like, oh, this isn't just someone out of nowhere just like snapping up Glitch and shutting it down. Because that wasn't the case. And so when we announced the acquisition, something really rare happened, but was because of all the hard work of my team, which is nobody said, oh, that's the end of Glitch, because it didn't come as a surprise. Fastly is a trusted company that doesn't have a history like a lot of companies do of acquiring and ruining things. And so it was like best case scenario for like Glitch to do its like exit. Exit is like if you get acquired or you become a public company. I'm very grateful for the path that Glitch had been on, but I wish that my fantasy is if Glitch was still its own neighbor, all still there working on it and like thriving.
Yeah. No, that's definitely the dream, right? It's just such a gamble. Even if you're acquired by a big company that do care a lot, and I'm sure Fastly, it sounds like they do at least to an extent. It's still such a gamble.
Yeah.
There are cases where we've seen that worked out. I think Instagram, Facebook, like Instagram did really well after Facebook got acquired by Facebook, Twitch with Amazon. But I feel like majority of the time it's just a different game. You don't own your destiny anymore. Everything needs to be green lighted by another layer. It's just brutal.
And there's also just the companies that have the most money are the ones that I personally don't align with values-wise. Again, that's also why I was very grateful that the Fastly acquisition came through, because the people at Fastly are very smart. They care about the same things that I care about: an open, secure, fast internet for everybody. It could have definitely gone where a company that I do not align with would have been like the one that had the most money and acquired us, in which case I wouldn't have stayed. That was the other kind of thing, was I think my and the rest of the team staying through the acquisition was a signal to the community that like, no, this is like a good move. Oh, yeah.
All right. One more question about Glitch. So, like I said earlier, we open your emails. It's one of the rare email newsletters that I always click on, right? I think that just shows like what you've done consistently. So do you have any secret sauce behind that? Anything you want to share about your newsletter? Like what makes a great email?
Yeah. There's two things. One, you're writing an email to people. So write like you're talking to people. That's something that a lot of marketing emails, they come off as very robotic. I think a lot of marketers say developers hate marketing. And I'm like, that's not the case, because they wear t-shirts with your logos on it. That's marketing. They just don't like being talked to like a robot's talking to a wall. So using like a human voice, like, my emails are signed by me, and now Jen Turner, my friend and who works at Glitch now, writes his emails. Like, it's funny. It's like the email was written by one Jen, now it's by Jen. And Jen is great. I've known Jen for a while, and I hired her because she used to write newsletters for NPM. I brought her in as a contractor to help blog and email for me while we're going through the grueling acquisition process. It was grueling because it was just a lot of PowerPoint PowerPoint presentations I had to give, everything possible about the company to Fastly. And she did such a good job that, they hired her full time after the acquisition. She's still there. She's doing great. So yeah, talking like a human. And I say this to anybody who's trying to sell anything or pitch anything. If you went up to somebody on the subway or a train and say, hey, here's the thing I'm working on, and then you say what you want to say, if you wouldn't talk to them like a robot, then don't write your emails like a robot. Mm-hmm. And so when you're writing anything down, saying it out loud so you hear it in your own voice, even record yourself if you need to, is a good practice. The other thing, content-wise, is if you are building a product and you want to tell a story to your community, your product is the least important part of the story. The most important part is your community and how they're using your product. Mm-hmm. And so our emails are heavily like, hey, here's a quick update. Now, let me tell you about all the things that the community is building, what they're writing about, what they're talking about in the forum. It's just a showcase of everything that they're doing, because that's far more interesting and exciting, not only to the rest of the community to read, but it's also way more exciting for me as a writer and storyteller to talk about. This is why whenever I get an email that a company's like, hey, we have a new brand, like a new logo, I'm like, who cares? Like, what do you want me to do with this information? Like who are you talking to? So really, like, I've talked to the folks at Valtown. I don't know if anyone here uses Valtown.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. They got like kind of like more technical glitch vibes. And I've talked to Steve, the founder. They're a great team. Their email is like, we have an update and here's all the vals that we love from the community. And so you can just see what people are making. And that way, if you are new to the community, you can see firsthand, what are people actually doing with this product? Because that's one of the biggest questions for when you're building a thing is like, what is it? But like, how am I supposed to use it? And nobody can tell you better how to use a thing than the people who are already using it. So all of our emails and our blogs are in service of telling our community stories, not telling our product team stories.
Noted. We'll definitely try to do more of that. Cool. By the way, I think I'm spending too much time on this session, so I'll pass the mic off to Julian.
Awesome. Hi. Thank you for all of that, Jen and Sunny. I was especially sort of moved by the piece about aligning your values with your work, and also kind of tickled by the idea of people reaching out to you because they think you represent the NBA. And I wanted to transition that into a question on broadly touching on personal identity or personal art practice versus public workplace identity. You've been in extremely public-facing roles, and I imagine finding balance and also just trying to figure out the kinds of things you want to make at work and outside of work. How have you found that balance? And is that something that's changed from pre-glitch to during glitch to post-glitch?
Yeah, when I was working at the NBA, I was not the face of the NBA. I was the face of the NBA to a small community of JavaScript developers that do the rest of my work. So if their league pass wasn't working, they would yell at me and I'd be like, it's not my problem. That's one of the most interesting things about being the public face of really anything, is that you are de facto support. And I led the support team and built the support team at Glitch. And one effect is if Glitch went down, it wasn't just like the support ticketing system that filled up. It was like my DMs on Mastodon, or like people reaching out for help, and I would have to tell them, contact support. So the lines are blurred between like what you're responsible for, and also when you're the public face of a company, a product runs 24/7, but the people that build it don't, and nor should they. So there was kind of blurred lines of like when I was available to help with somebody, I would get like a DM on the weekend. And I had to like, and this is my advice for anyone else who works in a customer-facing, support role. You really do have to set boundaries for when you are available for people, because that could easily be taken advantage of. And at the end of the day, the stuff that we're building, that a lot of us are building, Glitch, Codédex, it's not life or death. Like, people can wait a little bit of time if something is down or not working for them. It's not the end of the world, even if it feels like it sometimes when you're writing code and something's broken, it feels like it's the end of the world, but it's not. So boundaries were really important. And something I, still have been working on, especially after leaving Glitch, is going forward, how public facing do I want to be about the thing that I'm doing? Do I want to do something that's my own thing so that I could really own the full voice and vision? Or do I want to lend my voice and vision to another company? In which case, I have to do a lot of due diligence to make sure that our values are aligned and that I'm doing my best job at representing them, but they're also doing their best job at representing what I want to see in the industry. That's probably my biggest challenge coming up ahead. And I think anyone else's as well, who are trying to be mindful of who they're building for and what kind of harm reduction they bring into their practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for a super thoughtful answer. I've been thinking a lot about how tech trends, sort of like the industry ebbs and flows. There's always a new thing. Which means that we're always grappling with new ethical questions and trying to stay aligned with our values. As an abolitionist who works with technology, can you talk about your volunteer work with the Women's Prison Association? And maybe more broadly, like your journey trying to stay aligned with your values while working in tech?
Yeah. So I used to be on the junior board of the Women's Prison Association. They recently did a reorg, so that board does not exist anymore. So I'm not involved with them directly. But at the time, what we did was we did fundraising. We tried to raise funds. As you mentioned, I'm an abolitionist. I'm a student of abolition. I find that the prison industrial complex in America is extremely harmful and exploitative, but it's so ingrained into our capitalism that it feels like impossible to make any impact. And organizations like the Women's Prison Association empowers people to be able to help those who are touched by incarceration. So we're talking about women who maybe are arrested and they haven't been tried yet, or family members of those who are incarcerated who didn't do anything wrong, yet their families are completely torn apart by the system. In America, you say, it is until proven guilty, but it's often the opposite, especially if you're a person of color. And I felt responsible for getting involved, especially someone who studied technology. In grad school, I did study machine learning, just one of the pillars of artificial intelligence. It was mostly theory back then, and we're seeing some of the practice of generative AI, but AI has always been around and a major pillar of foundational computer science. And I found that several years ago, prisons all over the United States had already been using AI to determine whether people should get parole or not. And living in a white supremacist, misogynist society, it's no surprise that the data fed and learned by machines for AI are themselves white supremacists and misogynists. And so some of the work I did through the WPA was giving talks to tech audiences about this bias and being mindful of it as they go into this new era of AI being more a practice than a theory. It's important work, and there's just a lot to learn and think about, especially with this current administration. It also kind of shows, I think one of the most beautiful things about technology is how interdisciplinary it is, but it's also one of the scariest things because you see it in all disciplines for better or worse. And the fact that something that I was learning about in college is already being used to harm people in this nonprofit sector that is very important to me is very disheartening. And so what I can do is spread awareness about it. And that's something that anybody can do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be spreading awareness of something that's bad. It could also be good. I used to teach tech literacy at Montclair State to a lot of non-computer science majors. I had a class one year that was all dance majors, and they weren't sure what they would care about tech until I found out that they were using choreography software. And so I assigned them a project to present what kind of software they use for dancing. And they discovered all these other opportunities for using technology in their craft. That was just like kind of an example of tech that pervades a discipline that you wouldn't expect it to, but it was in a good way. So there are, among the bad, harmful stories, there are good stories out there as well. I think that's what keeps me in this industry versus leaving. There's just so much good out there. We have to just tell those stories and empower those stories. That's why I like projects like Codédex, like teaching you all how to code, is empowering you all, giving you the tools so you can go out and build a better web and build those good things to counteract the bad stuff that's happening, while also keeping you fluent and how these bad tools are being created. Because when you know how things are made, whether it's software or the toaster in your kitchen, or in my case, a candle or watercolor paint, when you know how to make it, you also know how to dismantle it if you need to. And I think that's so exciting and powerful about, this industry as a whole.
That was really beautiful. And I think ties in to what we were talking about before with like, what is the point of making things? Why make things from scratch? It's like you can't really learn that process and understand how you feel about it and how to approach it ethically and have the impact you want to have unless you know how each piece of it functions. Thank you so much. And my next question is a lot lighter, but I'm really excited to hear your answer to this too, which is, when people are working for a long time, they often have a list of things they do if they finally took a break, whether it's resting or traveling or baking, or I know you make candles. Is there a favorite part of your sabbatical so far, or is there anything that you're surprised by in this period of time? Maybe something that you have either found for the first time or revisited, or something that you're learning about yourself?
Yeah, so I have been making art and candles for quite some time. And so during this break, I learned how to start a business. I started an LLC last month, and I'm actually working on building my online store so I can start selling things. So there's a lot to learn about e-commerce and also business and taxes. They're all things that are very challenging and scary. Money frightens me. It always has. When you grow up without money, it becomes very terrifying as an adult. And so it's been like a really good, necessary challenge, keep my brain growing, managing all of that. I think the most interesting thing about this time I've taken is decentering my job as the most interesting thing about me. I think this is something that a lot of people who have jobs that they're passionate about struggle with. When I was in college, I worked at Outback Steakhouse. I was a prep cook. I was not passionate about peeling shrimp or making bloomin' onions ready to order. I wasn't passionate about bussing tables. So when I left that job and moved to, I did a lot of jobs to pay through college. But I never tied my identity to working at Outback Steakhouse other than ironically and as a joke. My dad was a kitchen manager, so I always joked that I was a Nepo baby. But working in tech, when you're so passionate about it, it's hard not to make it a huge part of your personality or your identity. But again, I'm like, I had the privilege to be able to take this time. And so I was like, I'm going to take it. And everybody around me, even my boss, my friend, my mentor, Anil Dash, was just like, take the time. In fact, he said, sell candles. And I was like, I'm not going to sell candles. And here I am several months planning to sell candles. So that guy must be smart or something. But it's just like not letting your job be the primary part of your personality. Have hobbies is basically what I'm practicing and what my advice is to other people. And always learning, which is really important for code, let alone everything else for the human species, is always be learning. I'm always learning new things. I'm learning about this e-commerce platform I'm planning to use for my site, and it's all third-party JavaScript, so I can sell stuff within my own web page. And so I'm like relearning third-party JavaScript stuff, and it's exciting because I know that I have the foundation of software development practice to help me do that versus having to sign up for something that does all the work for me and doesn't give me a lot of flexibility to do what I want to do, which is also an innate part of being an artist. And so it kind of really goes hand in hand. I will say back when I got started speaking at conferences in like 2013, 2014, I was giving talks about art and code and people thought I was silly because nobody understood that intersection. But now it's like the best part about tech art is that intersection of art and code. And again, it's all multidisciplinary and exciting. I think the hardest part is just kind of like finding your niche and not getting yourself lost in it. But if you do, like I did, and like I'm doing now, you can undo that through learning and discovering new kinds of things. Like the person in the chat who's going to take apart their coffee maker. You'll probably learn a lot about that. Just make sure it's unplugged first, please.
Yeah, that's some amazing advice. We were just talking in office yesterday about how we all need hobbies. And that last part of the answer really made me smile. I've been taking ballet classes for the first time in like 20 years. And I actually have been approaching it from the perspective of like, our instructor is always like, this isn't dancing, it's like a brain puzzle. And it feels really kind of complementary to coding and teaching coding in a lot of ways. So yeah, take an adult ballet class. Anyway, it off to Ellie for her question. Thank you so much, Jen. This has been lovely. So yeah, Ellie, please go ahead.
Yeah, Jen, that was a lot of it is very, I guess, resonating. So I just graduated college last year. And so a lot of this is very different from the way you talk about your experience, but also the same. Similar to you, like I also went to a state school that happens to be really good in their computer science program. There's a big tech community there. And yeah, it's the same issue with definitely having hobbies outside of your work being kind of the most interesting thing that you do. I had some questions about also, I guess, going back to something that you said that also really resonated with me about how in the way that you write, you're writing to humans. Like it's a very human thing to be able to, one thing to another. Here with the curriculum team, Julie and I, Sunny, have all kind of like we write and we're writing for, the community. I'm curious about your stance on how generative AI has been shaping like different, and how this is changing the way that writers write. I'm curious about your stance on it and how to keep it still human.
So I have a very nuanced take on artificial intelligence because of my background and also because I like to push against the lack of nuance in conversations about tech stuff. I think a lot of people who follow my work think that I'm entirely against it, but that's not necessarily the case. Generative AI, I do take issue with, and well, let me rewind. When I was first teaching, it was not long after Wikipedia had entered the scene. And Wikipedia, which is it's becoming controversial because of this administration right now, but for the past several years, Wikipedia has been a beloved corpus of information crowdsourced by people, for people, free. I'm on Wikipedia literally every single day. But back when I was teaching, educators were freaked out at the idea of like a source that wasn't a traditional encyclopedia and that, people can edit it. That means that they can add anything. And there's just so many conversations and meetings about, do we allow Wikipedia in the classroom? And my stance was, I can't stop it, but what I can do is teach my students the proper way to use it. And one thing was, you can't use a Wikipedia page as a citation, but Wikipedia at the end of the page has all of its citations, and that can lend you down a path towards finding proper sources that might even have better, more information for your paper than the Wikipedia page itself. And that resonated with my students. There's always a student that would just wholesale copy Wikipedia, but in this world, there are cheaters. There always has been, there always will be. AI, like ChatGPT, can be a tool people down the right path of like what they're trying to build. Some people will use it to do all the work for them wholesale, and that sucks. But you can tell. You can tell when that's the case. You can tell when someone has just had an AI write an entire essay because they're very hard. It's very cringy to read them. But if you need to write a quick email and you're staring at a blank screen and a blinking cursor and you just don't know where to start, having AI help you start out can lead you towards writing something really great. You just have to put in the work as well. So AI should be a collaborative tool, not a thing to do the work for you. And that's my take on it. And I know that some people disagree, and people disagree with me about a lot of things. It's just so hard right now because it's such a divisive technology that can also cause a lot more harm, way more harm than Wikipedia ever could. It's difficult, especially like, generative images. I have a huge problem with replacing art with AI developed stuff. That sucks. I don't like that. But it's a thing that has been coming for a long time. And it's just, again, going back to email and reading out loud and being like, does this sound like me? Like, is really, really important. And if you use ChatGPT to write an email for you and you read it out loud and it doesn't sound like you and you send it out, that means that you don't care. And I can't make people care, but the community can make people care because the community drives the business. If I had started using AI for the glitch emails, people would stop reading our emails. There's a reason why my emails are good, because it's my voice. So that's kind of like my wholesale take on that. Just replacing art, not good, but a tool to help you create something, being mindful of where the trainings came from, being mindful of how else the tool's being used. That's important for any technology, not even just like AI, but what browser you're using, what language you're deciding on, what database management tool you might be using, who's the creator, how did they create it. You have to do your due diligence, and that's like the hard work, but that's also another way that you learn how all this stuff is created.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great take. I agree that in the collaborative sense, I think there's just like a lot of conversations going on about, AI potentially like replacing software engineers, things like that. It's really interesting hearing your take on it. I'm also curious, like, since we're talking about creating and things, what are some places that kind of you find yourself always returning to for creative inspiration or stuff that's outside of your job? I'm curious kind of where you let your creative juices flow.
Yeah, I have watched more YouTube than any person on planet Earth. I love YouTube because, again, there was no YouTube when I was in high school. So if I wanted to learn how to do a thing, I had to read a book. Software came on CDs and boxes. So the fact that I got a printer, a really cool printer for my birthday, and the manual had 3 pages, and I was like, surely this does more than what's in these 3 pages. And I was able to find all these YouTube videos of other people using that printer, and I learned so much about how to just use the things that I already have. When I get a new art supply, I have this art subscription that I subscribe to, and they sent this charcoal pen, and I was like, what is this even for? And I just go on YouTube and find how artists are using that exact tool, and it's just very inspiring, and it's a really great part of the learning journey. So I love YouTube. For visual inspiration, I'm still really into Pinterest. I've been using Pinterest since day one. I remember when Michelle Obama became the first lady and famously joined Pinterest. I invited her to a board of just photos of the band Slayer, and she never accepted the invite. She actually used Pinterest, or if this is just a marketing thing. I just love seeing what other people are putting out into the world. In my candle making journey, I've just been finding a lot of candles that people are selling or making, because I also want to be mindful of consumption and sustainability. I don't want to make something that other people are making, not just because I want to feel special, but because if someone else is making already, why am I going to put out the same thing into the world? So being mindful of what is already out there so I can be unique has been really fun. Are.na is great. It's another visual tool. If you think Pinterest has so many ads on it. I don't use Instagram or Facebook, so I am immune to ads, but I used to use them. If you can get around the constant ads on Pinterest, but that's also kind of everywhere. Are.na is a place that you won't see ads, and it's more visual and is really cool. And also a lot of developers and designers are on there. I really like it. Well, I mean, I've been maintaining my own Mastodon instance for a few years. I've been on Mastodon since 2017, and there used to not be many people on it, but the people who were on it were very artsy. And so I have a community on there where I get inspired by a lot of the people that I'm making stuff with. And then finally, I've been on Tumblr since forever. Tumblr is still
Oh my gosh, yeah.
my girl, despite
everything.
Despite that's basically the internet's my girl, despite everything. Yeah, so I'm everywhere. I also have been trying to subscribe to any newsletter that a friend or a person I admire is writing. I'm hoping to just consume more long form visual stuff from the people directly versus depending on social timelines because of course they've become way less dependable over the past several years. So I'm like on everything, and that's just because I don't have a job right now, so I can do that.
Yeah,
I am really like trying to like soak it all in as much as possible.
For sure. Yeah. No, all of that stuff sounds so exciting. I studied like informatics and library sciences, so I'm also very
great
fan of just consuming.
Yeah, I've been talking to people in library sciences because that's probably going to be the next leg of my journey. So we'll have to talk more about that stuff.
Totally. Yeah. No, it's such a small little community. I love it, and it's growing bigger. I also know that we are kind of at time. I wanted to give you the space to share where people can find you if they want to learn more about you. I know that you did mention some various places of social media that you're on, or your newsletter, if there's places where people can find you.
Yeah, JennSchiffer.com is my personal page, handcrafted HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's a glitch app. Most of my stuff are still glitch apps. Make8bitart.com. If you go to JennSchiffer.com, you'll see I co-host a cool tech karaoke party in New York. I host a tech meetup in Jersey City called Jersey Script, so I keep dates of when that's going on here. So if you live in the area, check this out. Live Laugh blog is my main blog that I've been writing in a lot more since I left. That's where I write about my hobbies. I have a monthly newsletter there. Make8bitart.com, of course, my pixel art editor. If you want to like draw stuff without having a lot of ad JavaScript tripping you up. And then, yeah, you can see like I have an email. I answer my emails every day. I'm like the Mark Cuban of JavaScript. And
wait, what does that even mean?
Oh, so Mark Cuban, he'll answer any email you send him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Henry Rollins, I think, does too.
Nice.
But I don't know. I like immediately respond to an email and someone's like, wow, you're like Mark Cuban. I'm like, in a good way. But yeah, all my socials are there. I haven't done it in February, but I'm going to get back into it soon. But I've been streaming on YouTube, me working on my personal site and other stuff. I'm going to get back into that soon once I figure out. I go to therapy, as most adults should if they have the opportunity to, and I have to pick a new day and time. And once I figure out that, because my therapist is a conflict, I'll have a schedule for when I stream every week. So subscribe to my YouTube for that. So yeah, I'm all over the place, but JennSchiffer.com, that's the place to find it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I'll also kind of leave it open for the rest of the team to say a few words before we head out. But this was very, very awesome. Thank you so much. I feel like we all kind of learned a bunch.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. This was amazing.
I'm about to go get a tattoo now. It's going to be a little black cat. So
nice.
You heard it here first on Codédex.
Yeah.
There we go.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Jen.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, and for everything you've done for the creative coding space and for people trying to make things on the web. And for our community, check out our Creative Coding March monthly challenge called Digital Garden. That's out super soon. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jen. Thanks, Sunny and Ellie. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. Wish you best of luck in your next chapter. And we're all, following you, rooting for you and everything. So cool.
Yeah. And thank you. And I'm rooting for you and everyone here in learning in their journey to learn code. I can't wait to see what you all make.
Peace, y'all.